on the next episode of Dared BlackHearts Spooky Club.
I've got a few here at my fingertips. One of my favorites is the Monster Toilet, the Fearsome Flush.
Tonight at 8 on TV 13.
Well, hello, Gingles and Goblins, and welcome back to the channel. Today's spooky video, we're going to touch base on a topic that I really enjoy, and that's toys. Yes, action figures. Yes, I'm a grown man in my late 40s, but I still collect action figures. Call me a man-child, call me whatever you want. Probably heard it all before, but it's stuff that I actually enjoy collecting, and besides the expensive part of it, it is a healthy hobby. So today I'm going to touch base exclusively on the earliest line of Halloween toys and horror toys, not NECA and all of the stuff that is available these days from like NECA and Trick or Treat Studios. We're talking about when Kenner and Matchbox and LJN and all of the original toy companies put these out for us to enjoy as kids back in the day. Now, that's not saying that I won't eventually touch base on the NECA figures if we get to like a part 2 or a part 3, but today we're traveling back in time to Toys R Us, Kmart, and KB Toys. We're going to talk about spooky Halloween and horror toys, part 1. So join me if you dare.
I got a black heart, it's a new start. Welcome to the spooky club. I got a black heart, it's a new start. Welcome to the spooky club. Take that! Join the spooky club.
We'll return after these messages.
I'm Dr. Dreadful, and this is my zombie lab. Makes lots of gross things, like zombie brains.
Then you eat them. Mommy, no!
Ooh. Makes swarms of gooey bugs.
Tasty.
Yuck!
Makes some magic liquid and zombie barf.
Yum.
Dr. Dreadful Zombie Lab makes over 40 experiments, such refills sold separately from your magic.
So, I know I'm going to overlook a lot here, but I'm going to touch base on some of the ones that I had and still have to this day. And to start with this, we're going to go back to the 1970s. Now, the 1970s, we had like the little Remco monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, all of the original monsters. And it gets a little fuzzy, but I think at some point in time, Mego took over the Universal line, and I believe they transferred from Remco to Mego, and that started the Mego Monsters line. And the Mego Monsters line was definitely a game changer in the way that we all looked at horror in the form of toys, because these were highly articulated, detailed action figures that Marty Abrams, the founder of Mego, was releasing during that time frame. And if you were a kid growing up in the 1970s, it's a good bet if you enjoyed spooky stuff, you probably had your share of Mego monsters.
It's the battle of the mini-monsters, introducing Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features.
Frankenstein is in a foul temper. Dracula flies in, fangs bared. Creature surfaces, dripping with rage. Phantom shows his fiendish face. I can't look! Is he ugly? The monster battle rages on. It's a howl. Ah!
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features, each sold separately from Remco.
Now, of course, the difference between the Mego Mad Monsters and the Remco Monsters were that the Remco Monsters were a little bit smaller than the Mego Monsters. And of course, if we're going to touch base on Mego, Mego definitely had their fingerprint on the pulse of all of pop culture throughout the 1970s and the 1980s. If it was a movie or even a rock band like Kiss, which Kiss, being shock rock, definitely had their share of merchandise also. And no exception here as well, as Kiss had their own line of Mego action figures and lunch boxes. So yeah, you could take your peanut butter and jelly sandwich to school with a Kiss lunchbox. And there was also monster lunchboxes as well.
They come out at night. They strike without warning.
Oh, no!
But now, it's your turn to get even.
Grab his arms! I got mine!
Electronic stretch screamers. They scream when you stretch them and come back for more. And when you squeeze their heads...
Whoa! Yes! Oh no! Here we go again! Whoa!
Electronic stretch screamers. You can battle them all.
But long before the 1970s, I guess the roots for spooky toys, if you count comic books as toys, we got to go back to the 1950s with EC Comics, and then later on in the 1960s with Creepy Comics. Now, of course, Tales from the Crypt is streaming now on Shudder. The entire series is available on Shudder, so if you're a Tales from the Crypt fan, be sure to hop over and give Shudder a subscription, because you can catch all of the Tales from the Crypt episodes from start to finish over there. But long before it was a TV show in the 1950s, it started in EC Comics. So I guess in the 50s, it's kind of the start of creepy kids' toys, if you will, with Tales from the Crypt comics. And the one I just showed you, that was a reprint from the 1990s. But of course, there's collections of these and paperback where you can get an entire collection of the 1950s EC Comics. You can hop over to Amazon and you can get probably an entire 300-page collection for around $20 or $25 on Amazon right now if you're into the old Tales from the Crypt EC Comics. But Tales from the Crypt also had action figures. Now we're going to jump ahead a few decades here to the 1990s. Tales from the Crypt got so popular from the HBO series that they had their own Saturday morning TV show, Tales from the Crypt Keeper. Like I mentioned, they reissued the comic books, and they even had a talking Crypt Keeper doll. You would pull the string in his back, and he would talk, much like in the 90s they had with Steve Urkel talking doll, and Pee Wee Herman, and Freddy Krueger, which we'll touch base on in just a minute. As you can see, he's waiting patiently right behind me. But Tales from the Crypt Keeper also had an action figure line, and I just so happen to have one right here, and it's the Crypt Keeper himself. Tales from the Crypt Keeper. I believe this came on ABC Kids on Saturday mornings, and this is from 1992, if I'm not mistaken. I can't find the year on it, but I believe it was from 1992. But anyway, you can see there was a whole line that you could collect here from the Saturday morning cartoon, and I definitely watched Tales from the Crypt Keeper on Saturday mornings. And I watched Tales from the Crypt when I could, but we didn't have HBO when I was a kid, so Tales from the Crypt Keeper was my introduction to the Crypt Keeper, besides commercials that he would always do for Halloween. And we finally got it around 1993. We got HBO as a premium cable package, and I finally got to start enjoying Tales from the Crypt, the TV show.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Visit another dimension.
Those Grateful Dead dudes!
Everyone's a critic. Tales from the Crypt Keeper today.
Alright, so since we jumped ahead there a little bit from the 70s straight into the 90s with the Crypt Keeper, now we got to travel back a decade to the 1980s, because Freddy Krueger is waiting patiently for me to talk about him in the toy business. Yes, Freddy Krueger was such a cultural pop phenomenon in the 1980s that not only did Freddy have trading cards with Fright Flicks, but he also had a pull string Matchbox talking Freddy Krueger doll. Not only that, he had little squishy balls as well. I believe they were like little mad balls, if you will. I can't remember exactly what they were. He also had a LJN rubber figure, and he had just about anything you could think of. He even had his own 1-900 number that you could call and talk to Freddy Krueger. I mean, and what kid didn't want the Freddy Krueger claw glove for Halloween? So Freddy Krueger definitely had a great amount of toys in the 1980s. I don't think there was anyone in the horror movie industry that had more toys sold at Toys R Us during that time than Freddy. I don't even remember seeing a Michael Myers figure back then, or a Jason, or a Chucky. The only Chucky we got back then was My Buddy, believe it or not, because that's kind of what Chucky was based off of. But Freddy, he was at all the toy stores back then.
Hero City!
Just beyond the edge of town, a haunted house with ghosts and ghouls dares you to look around. Start in the eerie elevator, make it to the top, and chase out your first ghost. Then get a helping hand over the bridge. Oh no, you're trapped! But if you pull the secret lever, open the staircase and go down the ramp, all you need is a push in the right direction, and you're ready for more mysteries inside the haunted house. Matchbox Haunted House, part of Hero City, comes with everything seen here.
And what was bigger in the 1980s in the line of spooky stuff, other than who you gonna call Ghostbusters? That's right, Ghostbusters had a line of fast food toys at Hardee's. I've touched base on fast food and Halloween here on the channel, so if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check out the history of fast food and Halloween, part 1 here on the channel. But Ghostbusters, of course, was affiliated with Hardee's for Ghostbusters 2, and then Kenner had a whole entire line dedicated to the Saturday morning cartoon show, The Real Ghostbusters. Yes, much like Tales from the Crypt, the Ghostbusters movie was such a success that it had its own cartoon as well, and we had everything from lunchboxes to action figures, anything that you could think of. And I've got a few here at my fingertips. One of my favorites is the monster toilet, the fearsome flush. Yes, you heard that right, the fearsome flush. Who doesn't want a creepy toilet? But they also did spins on like Dracula and the Hunchback, any kind of a monster you could think of. And of course there was Slimer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and then there was the bug-eyed ghost. Just about any kind of monster you could think about. The Real Ghostbusters had it because you had to have the monsters for the actual Ghostbusters to fight. And here's the fright features. Ghostbusters here. His arm fell off. His hand fell off somewhere. I don't know what happened to it. But anyway, this was like the second series, and they reissued these about 10 years ago when the Ghostbusters movie was coming out. Super cool pieces. The Real Ghostbusters. I had a few of these as a kid. I always wanted the Fire Station and the Ecto-1, but unfortunately I only ended up with like one as a hand-me-down as a kid. Now I've got an entire collection of these things. But anyway, these are two of my favorites. I do love the Fearsome Flush because it's just a hilarious piece. So sound off in the comments below if you ever had any of the Real Ghostbusters action figures.
For Halloween, Toys R Us doesn't miss a trick, and the prices are a treat. We've got costumes for all Toys R Us kids, even grown-ups, and loads of candy, makeup, masks, and more. Toys R Us will make your Halloween supernatural.
And who would have thought that a little movie put out by Trauma in the 80s called Toxic Avenger would become so popular that it would have its own cartoon and action figures as well. But much like Tales from the Crypt Keeper, out of nowhere, the Toxic Avenger ended up getting his own action figure line. Now, I never had any of them as a kid, but I remember seeing them in stores and I thought they were super cool. They even had Toxic Avenger comic books. It was a wild time back in the 80s and the 90s to have people like the Crypt Keeper and the Toxic Avenger having their own line of spooky toys. Explains probably why I ended up the way I did as an adult. So sound off in the comments below if you remember any of the Toxic Avenger toys back in the day. I believe they were put out by Playmates, the same company that put out Ninja Turtles, if I'm not mistaken.
Crusader! It's Dr. Killamoff, the evil alien who wants to pollute the whole world. He's gonna smogify every tree in Traumaville. But look who's gonna stop him. It's Toxie, the trendy yet hideously deformed leader of the Toxic Crusaders. How does he do it? He's toxic but tasteful. This grime fighter really comes up with the works with his ever-faithful mop. They're gross, but they're gonna clean up the world. Toxic Crusaders! Hideously deformed action figures and toxic waste, each sold separately from Playmates.
Much like the Crypt Keeper and the Toxic Avenger, Swamp Thing, who started out in DC Comics, House of Secrets had its own TV show and a line of Kenner action figures. That's right, you can see Swamp Thing back there lurking in the shadows. Swamp Thing had their own line of action figures, and I definitely had a few of those. I think mine was a glow-in-the-dark Swamp Thing, and it was super cool. I remember getting it at Kmart in 1990, hard to believe now, that's been over 35 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember seeing the TV series on the USA Network, and I had to have a Swamp Thing action figure. It was a super cool piece. It was between that at the time and a WWF Hasbro wrestling figure, but the spooky side of me won out over the wrestling side of me, and I opted for the Swamp Thing action figure that day from Kmart.
Here comes Kmart!
Kmart has always been the price leader.
And now Kmart has even lower prices.
You can count on super low prices every day, because we've further discounted hundreds of quality and brand name items.
We want you to compare. We'll meet all advertised prices now in effect at any store.
That's Kmart's low price guarantee. We sell for less.
That's the Kmart way.
That's real saving. That's the Kmart way.
And we're not going to leave the 80s or the early 90s without talking about probably what most people would consider the holy grail for spooky toy collectors now, and that is My Pet Monster. Yes, My Pet Monster, the little furry monster that came shackled in chains. It's even getting a reissue in 2026. It was supposed to come out in 2025, but I believe then it was only available at a Comic-Con. So I believe the Loyal Subjects company is re-releasing My Pet Monster in 2026, and it should be available at Walmart stores or on the Loyal Subjects website, possibly right now. I checked a while back and it said it was sold out, and to check again later. So if you want to hop over to the Loyal Subjects website, you may be able to get your hands on a My Pet Monster reissue. And My Pet Monster even had its own lunch boxes and coloring books and just about anything you could think about. Now, I never personally had a My Pet Monster. I do have a mini one now that was put out by the Super 7 Corporation, but if they do reissue it, I will be getting my hands on a My Pet Monster for sure to add to my spooky collection. So sound off in the comments below if you had a My Pet Monster, or you plan on getting a My Pet Monster, or you just remember My Pet Monster, because it was definitely one that was sought after then, and it's still very sought after and highly collectible today.
Hey, Monster Pet! Back! Monster Pet has good action. Shade up! For action! Yeah, get a Monster Pet! There! Monster Pet's a good pet, too. And so friendly. Look out! They'll get you! Uh-oh. Beware of Monster Pets!
My Monster Pets have puppet action features. Part of the My Pet Monster collection, each sold separately with breakaway chains from Amtoy.
And of course, also in the 90s, Beetlejuice had their own line of action figures, because Beetlejuice not only was a successful movie, but Beetlejuice also had their own line of Saturday morning cartoons. And I definitely had my share of the Kenner Beetlejuice action figures. I'm still holding out hope that when Beetlejuice comes out, they'll do like they did with the Ghostbusters, and they will re-release some of the Beetlejuice action figures, because that would definitely be super cool. And of course, we had Munsters action figures back in the 1970s, 1960s, because the Munsters was another one of those with the Mego Mad Monsters. They were at the earliest origins of spooky Halloween toys. And sometime in the early 80s, I think these were found at dollar stores or at Kmart. Those little bendable rubber toys called Halloween Monsters. Now, I had a few of these when I was a kid. If you remember Halloween Monsters, sound off in the comments below, because they're definitely pretty obscure now. Right up there with the Mr. Bones puzzle candy, which in itself was not only candy, but it was also a toy. So lots of obscure pieces. Again, we're just going to cover a few of them here in this video, because there's so much to dive into. We could go on and on about this for an hour. And of course, when the 1990s came around, if you're a 90s kid, you had Goosebumps stuff, and you had creepy crawlers. Of course, creepy crawlers was a super cool, popular 90s piece where you could kind of make your own little creepy crawly monsters. And I didn't have one because I was getting to the point at that time where I was becoming like 13 or 14. So I was more or less moving away from toys, but I definitely remember the commercials for it during the afternoon when I would watch the Batman, the animated series. Yes, I was still watching cartoons, but I didn't want to buy toys at that time. But I definitely remember creepy crawlers. In the 90s also had the monster face, where you could create your own monster face. Who wouldn't want that sitting under their Christmas tree? I remember the monster face. I remember seeing it in stores around 94 or 95. Again, I was a little too old then to want that, but I do remember seeing the monster face and thinking, man, that is definitely a cool concept. Now, one that I almost left out from the 1980s, another super popular one, much like Freddy here, they had their own hotline, and that was the Boglins. Yes, the Boglins, the little creepy hand puppets, had their own 1-900 number, and the Boglins were super popular. Another piece that was re-released a few years ago and are highly sought after on the collectible market. So there was even a Halloween Boglin that I still have in my collection, complete with the orange and black color scheme. So sound off in the comments below if you remember the Boglins, and if you have any of those little creatures creeping their way into your collection.
Monster Face, the gruesome monster head you make and remake into the most monstrous monsters imaginable.
Now for the test. It works!
Monster Face comes with everything shown here.
Now again, that's just part one of this. We could go on and on here. There's so much I've left out. Halloween McNugget buddies. If we're going to go into the 2000s, we've got to talk about the Monster High craze, because Monster High now is such a highly collectible piece on the horror market. So there's so many more that we're going to talk about in part two of this down the road. There's so many series I've got going on right now. We've got the history of Halloween horror toys. We've got the history of Halloween marketing, Halloween and fast food, the history of Ben Cooper, Halloween through the decades. I cover it all here on Derek BlackHearts Spooky Club, as well as Halloween hunts, Summerween hunts, toy hunts, all things spooky, Halloween, holiday related, and retro related. So if you're into all of this chaos, how about slashing that subscribe button and joining the club, and be sure to turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a moment of the spooky retro fun I have here on the channel. And until next time, I'll see you on the dark side.
The dark side is always there, waiting for us to enter, waiting to enter us. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight.
Thank you for watching Channel 7. This is KGO TV, serving the Bay Area. This concludes our broadcast day.